Olá, leitores do blog Lei Islâmica em Ação. Aqui é José Tento, em uma localidade qualquer na fronteira do Canadá com os Estados Unidos, e com a oportunidade de entrevistar Alexandra Bellair. Alexandra, ela tem o blog Zantepas Chamberpot, que é dedicado, dentre outras coisas, a monitorar abusos de direitos humanos para impor a narrativa, algo que, segundo ela, é comum no Canadá. Ela é original da Tcheco-eslováquia e migrou para o Canadá fugindo do comunismo. Ela vai falar sobre a sua experiência e como uma sociedade livre pode se transformar em autoritária. So, Alexandra, would you please tell the Brazilian audience about your experience and how you see you run away from communism, now live in Canada, and you see some similarities of things that happened before?
Well, I was born in Czechoslovakia, and I was a daughter of a political dissident who was labeled by the communist government as potential leader of the people against the people. And that's how convoluted things got. And when I was 13, my parents and I escaped, and we came to Canada. It is difficult to describe a lot of things, but certainly one thing that was very difficult for me growing up was that everybody knew my dad was a political dissident, and they would virtue signal by treating me badly. Even teachers would single me out just so that nobody could accuse them of being nice to the daughter of a political dissident, because that would be bad for them. So they would both be sort of protecting themselves and kind of virtue signaling by treating me worse than other students. And it was difficult. One teacher, because I'm blonde and blue-eyed, one teacher would actually stand in front of the class. Now, this was in the 70s, so it wasn't that long after the Second World War. Most of my teachers had lived through it. So she would stand in front and say, "Look at her. She's blonde and blue-eyed. The Germans, the Nazis, they would have kept her because she's like one of them. But the rest of you, they would have sent to the concentration camps and killed you." So that was kind of part of my daily life when I was growing up there. And it's the way I see the virtue signaling here in Canada now is very similar. People are, if you don't have the right views, you're going to be, again, called a Nazi and worse than Hitler. And it's all about the virtue signaling as well, to show your ideological purity. And that is so similar to how it was under communism in Czechoslovakia. You see it in so many different ways where some people actually believe it, but most people don't. Most people simply go with the narrative in order to appear as good in what the most judgmental parts of the society consider good. They will not say anything against the narrative because they're afraid of being shunned, of their jobs being affected. Now, in the ages of the internet, they're afraid of being doxxed. So, and their children being, again, treated badly. So it's very, very similar in the atmosphere of people self-censoring what they say, or being afraid to say a joke that might get them into serious trouble. It's different in that it is not state-imposed, but it is becoming to be state-imposed here in Canada, because we have extrajudicial courts called the human rights tribunals. And I think they're called human rights tribunals not because they uphold human rights, but because they target human rights with fake rights, with trying to make people even more afraid to say or be seen as doing anything that isn't ideologically pure according to the postmodernists. I have actually followed a lot of times where a lot of lawsuits or court cases being brought against people who are free speech, perhaps not absolutists, but defenders. And there is great effort to trying to shut these people down and again label them as Nazis and white supremacists or whatever, even if they're not actually, white. As I think it's really important that people are judged based on their actions and not on what group they belong in or what they. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself and stumbling on my words. I think the substance of a person is in their actions and their consequences, not in what grievance group they belong in. This is really a cancer to the soul, this grievance culture. So don't divide people up by groups. Treat them each as an individual and avoid making the same mistakes Canada has. Thank you.
Coming up with something that may be different from what was in Tcheco-eslováquia at your time, that is here in Canada, a foreign group that has a special treatment. Would you see that basically, the Islamization of Canada going on? How do you put that into the context? That would be something that is new from your experience, right?
Well, I think I don't know all of the intricacies of how this came about, but because of the grievance industry, all minorities are treated somewhat better than people who are not perceived as being minorities. Under communism, this was done by joining the political party, the Communist Party, from when you were a young pioneer to when you were a communist youth to where you're a member of the party. You knew that you were equal, but more equal than others. You could get away with a lot more. The laws weren't applied equally to everybody. So if there was a person who was, for example, not liked by the system, there would be ways of getting them in trouble for things that everybody does every day. And we're seeing very similar things being done here, where actions have consequences not based on the action itself, but on the groups to which that individual belongs. And Muslims in particular are a very protected group. They seem to be at the top of the grievance hierarchy, so that they even LGBT people seem to have fewer rights, or if I could rephrase myself, if there is a clash between the rights of the LGBTQ and the Muslims will always win out, regardless of principles. And it is precisely this asymmetrical application of the law which tears at the soul of the society, because people see that they are treated differently than others, and it's hurtful, and it creates a lot of tension between the groups. And if you don't have freedom of speech where you can talk these things out in the open and discuss them, it's just going to go underground and fester, and I am terrified that it's going to come out in violent ways.
Okay, Alexandra, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.